Hey folks, we're here at the Nebraska Sheep and Goat Producers Annual Conference in Columbus, Nebraska. One of our guest presenters was Kelly Froehlich, came down from Minnesota, right?
Yes.
Has got a couple of different presentations today. And this morning she presented on sheep and goat nutrition. And I thought some of the things that you're talking about with the economics of sheep and goat nutrition were very interesting. A lot of people kind of get hung up on getting the best performance out of things, but maybe aren't looking at their bottom line closely enough.
Yeah.
And I was just kind of wondering if you had, some pieces of advice or things to think about for, commercial producers, commodity meat goat or sheep producers, to help them make better business decisions.
Yeah. So a couple things kind of come to mind. The first one, like you talked about or mentioned in my presentation, I talked about different types of feed stuff. I always encourage producers to look for feedstuffs that are local to your area. Just because your neighbor is feeding something doesn't mean you have to be also feeding that. My family has a farm up in Minnesota, and we're kind of furthest north, and you can still kind of grow corn. So there's not a lot of available feed stuff, but like one of my colleagues, he lives in central South Dakota, and he has all sorts of different types of feeds. And one thing that is always unique talking to him, he always has different types of feeds. Like he's getting screenings that are really, really cheap, like from pea production, I think lentils, different types of feed stuff. And sheep and goats can use, a lot of different feed stuff. So look for things that are cheap in your area that can meet their nutritional needs. Mm-hmm. And then the second advice that I always kind of recommend is the one thing to not cheapen out on your nutrition program is minerals, right? Mm-hmm. Minerals are kind of your keystone for a lot of drivers, of performance. And so that is one area that you want to make sure that you're feeding a high quality mineral. And you can kind of look at the different bags and look at the content of salt, because that will vary greatly, and that kind of will depend on how much, the mineral and stuff will cost. But
there's about 1 million different companies out there selling sheep and goat mineral. I know for me and goat mineral, I look for high copper. Yeah. Is what I go after. I use Premier One's premix, labeled for goats. But there's tons of other options out there that are available. Yeah. Is there any particular brand or anything that you would recommend?
No. I don't want to promote any one product. There are better ones than other ones, or there's, some that are better than others. But I guess just, look at it. If you can, I would probably get, mineral that's local to your area, because if it's formulated in your area, hopefully it's meeting the nutritional needs that's in your area, because you go throughout the United States, your soil levels of different minerals and stuff are going to be different, right? So, talk to producers, in your area, see what works for them. If you have a good nutritionist, in your area, maybe pick their brain a little bit on that. I know at home in Minnesota, we use, a local manufacturer, and we've worked with them a little bit because we're very selenium deficient. So we put, higher amounts of vitamin E and stuff in our mineral.
Okay. One last question on the topic of mineral. This is something that is kind of ebbs and flows in popularity on the goat side of things, is mineral buffets, or cafeterias, whatever you want to call them. Yeah. A lot of people think this is some new thing. It was around when I was a kid. Yeah. I know people that have tried it. Yeah. I know people that stopped doing it. Yeah. I don't know any commercial goat or sheep producers that did it and stuck with it. Yeah. Do you have any thoughts on those? Yeah. Obviously, there's obvious negatives like the logistics and stuff like that, but as far as animal nutrition goes.
Yeah. So there's a lot of different thought out there. You'll hear, people who are actually experts, in minerals say different things about that. The general consensus, I think, is that sheep and goats don't have the wisdom to pick what they need, and it's better to have a mix. But on the flip side of things, I do know a few university researchers who will argue that, and they say that they actually do have the wisdom, but how we've raised our animals and everything,
they don't have the opportunity to learn.
Yeah, they don't have the opportunity to learn. It's kind of the same mindset if you go let's say you're out west and you have some plants that are toxic, you know, animals local to that area, they'll know to either avoid it or only eat a little bit or follow up with another plant to avoid that toxicity. But if you pull an animal that's from a completely different part of the country and you put them in there and they chow it down because they like the taste, they might kill themselves, right? Yeah. So that's kind of, I guess, my thoughts on the whole mineral debate of whether or not to.
It's definitely something of a contentious issue because there's people that feel very strongly on both sides of it.
Yes.
And there's probably some truth to both sides of it in reality.
Yeah.
The one last thing in your presentation, and this is something I haven't had a chance to make a video about yet, but I've been wanting to talk about, is when you're looking at feedstuff costs, you take those macronutrients, the carbohydrates, the TDN and the protein, and you figure out what are you paying per pound of protein or per pound of TDN. And you had an example of that. And for example, I'm running goats on corn stalks right now. They're going to be going into second trimester. I'm going to start to look at upping their protein because corn stalks are only like, 7% protein, something like that. I'm going to start looking at upping their protein. What I do, because it's the most economical for me on a per pound of protein basis, at least it's the most economical thing I've found, is actually alfalfa hay.
Yeah.
A lot of people would probably go out there and put pellets out or range cubes or something like that. But just wanted to call that one out, that I think that that's something that when you really start getting into the economics of it, like that's an important step to get into.
Yeah.
I think.
And
So.
I think, that kind of follows up a little bit with the first point that I pointed out is look at feeds that are in your area, but also look at the cost of it, right? And if you know that you're going to be short on protein, you can evaluate those different feeds on a cost per pound of protein, and that's a better way of comparing it than just comparing it, to total cost.
Yeah, because total cost can be very misleading.
Yeah.
So, but thank you for your time, Kelly. Hopefully, this will be insightful to folks out there. So, if anybody does have any questions or wants to reach out to you, we'll put your contact information down in the video description.
Yep.
All right.